Shukla, your extremely scholarly and masterful articulation of civil-military fusion as a way of reimagining strategic power really taught me so much. But above all, it, I think, gives all of us pause because, as you say, the assumption has always been in democracies that military ek taraf, civil establishment dusri taraf. And what you're actually arguing, I think with great examples, is that one of the reasons that China is where China is today, challenging the Americans, posing a security challenge for us here in India, is because it decided to fuse its military establishment with its civil establishment. This is the central thesis of your book. So let's start there. How did China do this? Give us a few examples, whether it is companies not working for profit but working for the Chinese government, whether it is their 1,000 talent program where they're recruiting the finest sort of contemporary scientific and technology minds from all over the world, right? Whether it is the Chinese, quote unquote, infiltration of Silicon Valley in America. Where do we start with this China smartness in fusing civil and military establishments?
Well, first of all, Barkha, thank you for reading the book.
It was a pleasure to read it, sir.
I know the things that you're quoting means you read the book. So, I don't know where to start. I thought I'll start from my personal journey of CMF, but let's start with China and we'll get to that. So, see, CMF in China. Firstly, they call it...
CMF is Civil Military Fusion.
What do they call it? Military Civil Fusion.
Which means they privilege the military over the civilian.
It is military-led, perhaps. And I was amazed. President Xi advocates the cause in an aphorism, which he says, why build walls of granite between cylinders of excellence? Common sense.
Yeah.
Then he proceeds. MCF has been in their veins for a while, but it was first...
and do they actually call it MCF? Military Civil Fusion?
They call it military civil fusion. And it was in the Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin era, where, in fact, I have an interesting anecdote to tell you about how the Varyag carrier was procured, MCF.
I think
that is brilliant.
I have to pause you there because I have to first simplify the story for our audience and then ask you to tell us that story.
Okay. So
there is a basketball player
exactly
who masquerades as a billionaire tycoon on behalf of China and then ends up purchasing an aircraft carrier from Ukraine.
Absolutely. So let's start with
Oh
that.
my God, there's so many stories. Okay.
So today we are all amazed at, China's 3 aircraft carriers, super air carriers, stealth, F-35s flying out of them, electromagnetic power and those catapults and all. But do you know in 97, 98, not too far back, because these carriers take a very long time, they didn't have even one carrier. And they were scouting the world for carriers. And they come to know that there is Varyag, if I pronounce it right, Varyag, is a carrier lying in a Ukrainian shipyard. अब उसको ले कैसे? क्योंकि military purposes के लिए कोई देगा नहीं. So the Chinese decide, they pick up a guy called Zhu Zhengping. He's a basketball player from the Guangzhou military region. And why him? Because he's tall, nice looking. So they say कि ये बंदा जो है, he will pose as a business tycoon and tell the Ukrainians that they want this carrier to build a floating casino in Macau. सही कहानी है. And this is from Rush Doshi's book. I first read it there and of course then it's gone viral. And so what does he do? What do? They buy him a $30 million villa in Hong Kong, which is financed by the Huaxai Bank, which is a state bank. So it is state, civil military fusion. And he sets up offices in Kiev, in Beijing. So जब वो लोग आते हैं, तो लगता है बड़ा business empire है. And in some of those Chinese magazine, he poses with nice looking women and all to give that whole image.
Yeah.
Actually, he was fronting for an aircraft carrier. And when he says, no, there are no military motivations and all that. But to cut a long story short, he goes to Ukraine and he manages to buy that carrier. But the Chinese tell him, no, not the carrier, the blueprints of the carriers. So deep. It takes him another 2 to 3 years. He gets the carrier and the blueprints. And then the carrier is, it moves from Ukraine to Ankara, where it gets stuck in a whole lot of bureaucracies, as usually happens. Now, who steps in? the president of China, Jiang Zemin, he flies to Ankara, sorts it out, and of course offers the Chinese market access and all that. So the remarkable thing here is common sense. Sam, dam, dand, bhed.
Yeah.
That is it. We, in my view, actually, let me now tell you. Anecdotally, my dad used to tell me, or somebody in my family, it's in my head, Saraswati, Lakshmi or Durga ka Mishra. Look how brilliant what it was. It meant invest in centers of academic excellence, research and development, so Nalanda kind of universities, Allahabad, which was the Oxford of the East, real good academic institutions, which will turn out talent and technologies. हमारा talent USA जा रहा है क्योंकि यहाँ ecosystem ही नहीं है. और सरस्वती जब आपकी इतनी अच्छी होगी, then you will create Lakshmi, which is a very respectful thing. India में unfortunately business is not. It is idiotic because our civilization tells us Lakshmi is to be respected.
Yeah.
तो सरस्वती, लक्ष्मी और लक्ष्मी से कुछ पैसे लगाइए दुर्गा में. Instruments of power. Now I have not seen it in any text, but it just struck me. This is exactly what China is doing.
So let's start.
And just one point I want to make. So I'm saying, and let me quote this. So acquisition in China began in not some DPP or those great documents. It was at the convergence of strategic deception, which is in their statecraft, state funding, commercial fronting, diplomatic maneuvering, and state intervention. And that was one example, and there are millions of examples.